The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden streaks over the dusty streets of their small village. Children played barefoot on the narrow paths, their laughter echoing through the air, but Anita and Henry were nowhere among them. At just 14, Anita was already working after school, selling roasted corn by the roadside to support her mother and younger siblings. Life had never been kind to her, but she didn't complain. She had learned early that survival meant sacrifice. Henry, on the other hand, was the only son of a struggling family. His father had abandoned them when he was just a boy, leaving his sickly mother to raise him and his younger sisters alone. Henry was bright, brilliant even, but poverty threatened to keep him away from the future he dreamed of. They met one evening when Henry, hungry and desperate, stood near Anita's stall, staring at the steaming corn she was selling. "You want one?" Anita asked, already handing him a cob. Henry hesitated. "I don't have money." She smiled. "Take it. You can pay later." From that day on, their bond grew. Anita, despite her own struggles, always found a way to help Henry. She admired his intelligence, his determination to succeed. They spent hours studying together under the dim glow of a lantern, with Henry promising that one day, he would make it out of poverty and change both their lives. When it was time for university, Henry was accepted into a prestigious school, but his family had nothing to support him with. Anita didn't hesitate. She used her meager earnings to pay his first tuition installment. She worked multiple jobs, cleaning houses, selling bread in the mornings, and washing clothes for wealthy families just to make sure Henry could stay in school. Her own dreams faded in the background. She had planned to study too, but when it became clear they couldn't afford tuition for both of them, Anita made the ultimate sacrifice. She dropped out. "It's okay," she told Henry with a smile. "You just focus on studying. I'll take care of the rest." Henry cried that day, swearing that he would never forget her sacrifice. Years passed. While Anita struggled in the real world, Henry thrived in school. Every call from him brought joy to her heart. He would tell her about his professors, his exams, and the big companies that scouted him for internships. She listened with pride, believing that her sacrifices were leading them to a better future. Finally, the day she had been waiting for came. Henry graduated. Anita had spent the last of her savings to buy him a new suit for his convocation. She couldn't attend, but she didn't mind. What mattered was that the man she loved had finally made it. Days later, Henry returned to the village for a visit. Anita, dressed in her best outfit, ran to his house, excited to see him. She had imagined the moment 1,000 times. He would hug her, thank her for everything, and tell her that their future together was about to begin. Instead, she found him sitting under the mango tree, his posture stiff. When he saw her, he didn't smile. He didn't even look happy. She slowed her steps. "Henry." He exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Anita, we need to talk." Her heart pounded. "What is it?" He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "I appreciate everything you've done for me, but, you're not the woman for me." Silence. Anita felt the world tilt beneath her feet. What are you saying?" Henry sighed. "I mean, you didn't go to school, Anita. You won't fit into my new world. I've met someone who understands my dreams. I can't be with you." Her breath hitched. "I sacrificed everything for you. I dropped out so you could go to school. I worked day and night so you wouldn't have to suffer. And now I'm not good enough." He didn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry." Anita stared at the man before her, the man she had loved for years, and realized the painful truth. She had built him into the man he was today, but he had never intended to build a future with her. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, swallowed the lump in her throat, and turned away. If Henry thought she was too small for his world, she would build one of her own. Anita walked away from Henry's house, but her legs felt heavy, as though each step required all the strength she had left. Her mind replayed his words over and over. "You're not the woman for me." How could he say that after everything she had done for him? She had worked her fingers to the bone, stolen to feed his family, and even sacrificed her own education, her future, all for him. And now, he had simply cast her aside like she meant nothing. Tears threatened to fall, but she clenched her jaw and forced them back. Crying wouldn't change what had happened. By the time she reached home, the small one-bedroom house she shared with her mother and two younger siblings, her mother immediately noticed something was wrong. "Anita," her mother called gently from the kitchen. "You look pale. What happened?" Anita shook her head quickly and forced a smile. "Nothing, Mama. Just tired." But her mother wasn't convinced. She wiped her hands on her wrapper and stepped closer, studying Anita's face. "Did Henry say something?" Hearing his name was like a stab to Anita's heart, but she swallowed the pain. "Mama, I don't want to talk about it." Her mother sighed but didn't press further. Instead, she reached for a bowl of food and handed it to her. "Eat something. You've been working too hard lately." Anita took the bowl, but her appetite was gone. Everything she had worked for, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, had been for Henry. And now, she had nothing to show for it. Anita had met Henry when they were just children, playing in the dusty streets of their village. Even then, he had dreams bigger than most boys his age. "I will become a great man someday," he had told her once, his young eyes filled with determination. Back then, Anita had believed in him more than anyone else. And when his father abandoned his family, leaving his mother to struggle alone, Anita had been there. She had shared her lunch with him at school, given him the little money she made selling roasted corn, and when the time came for university, she didn't hesitate, she worked herself to exhaustion just to make sure he could go. When her own tuition fees became a problem, she had made the hardest decision of her life. "Henry, I can't continue my education right now," she had told him. His eyes had widened in shock. "Anita, no. You've always wanted to study. I can't let you do this." She had smiled then, a warm, reassuring smile, and placed a hand on his. "It's okay. One of us has to make it first. And you're the smartest person I know. Once you finish school and get a good job, you can help me return." Henry had promised her. He had held her hands and sworn, "I will never forget this, Anita. I swear, I will make it up to you." But he had forgotten, and now, she was left with nothing but broken dreams. The following days felt like a blur. Anita went about her daily routine like a ghost, waking up early, helping her mother in the small food stall they ran, washing clothes for rich families in the village. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the pain. News of Henry's new fiancée spread like wildfire. The girl was the daughter of a prominent businessman, educated, polished, everything Henry wanted. People whispered about how lucky he was, how he had finally made it. Nobody spoke about Anita, nobody mentioned how she had broken herself to build him up. One evening, as she sat outside, staring at the sky, her younger sister, Chidima, walked up to her. "Sister Anita," the little girl said softly. "Why are you so sad these days?" Anita forced a smile. "I'm not sad, my dear. I'm just thinking." Chidima frowned. "Is it because of that boy, Henry?" Anita's smile faltered. "Who told you that?" "I heard Mama talking about it with Auntie Grace," Chidima admitted. "She said you loved him very much." Anita's throat tightened. Loved? Did she still love him? Could she love someone who had betrayed her so cruelly? "I don't know, Chidima," she whispered. Her little sister sat beside her, hugging her small legs to her chest. "Will you still marry him?" Anita let out a bitter laugh. "No, my dear. He's marrying someone else." Chidima was silent for a moment before she spoke again. "Then, will you marry a better man?" "A better man?" Anita had never thought about that. She had spent so much of her life building Henry's future that she had forgotten she could build her own. As she looked at her sister, a thought sparked in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, Henry's betrayal wasn't the end. Maybe, it was the beginning of something new. Days turned into weeks, and the pain of Henry's betrayal slowly hardened into resolve. Anita refused to be pitied. She refused to let herself be the woman who was abandoned and forgotten. If Henry thought she was beneath him, she would prove to the world that she was more than just the girl who sacrificed everything for a man. She sat one evening with her mother, the weight of her thoughts pressing on her chest. "Mama," she said, "I want to start my life over." Her mother looked up, surprised. "How do you mean?" "I want to go back to school," Anita said firmly. "I don't care how long it takes. I need to rebuild what I lost." Her mother sighed. "But we don't have the money for that, my child." "I'll find a way," Anita said. "I've worked for others all my life. It's time I work for myself." That night, she lay awake, planning. She had no savings, everything had gone into Henry's education, but she had something more valuable: determination. The very next morning, Anita went to the market, bought ingredients on credit, and started a small food business. She woke up before dawn, prepared local meals, and sold them at the village square. Business was slow at first, but her cooking was good, and word spread quickly. Soon, her food stall became the most popular in the village. With the money she earned, she enrolled in evening classes, determined to complete her education. 3 years passed. Anita was no longer the girl who had been left behind. She had finished her studies and opened a successful restaurant in the city. She was independent, strong, and respected. One evening, as she counted the day's earnings, a man walked into her restaurant. She looked up, and froze. It was Henry. But he wasn't the confident, polished man she had last seen. His suit was worn, his face tired, and his eyes carried a deep sadness. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Henry cleared his throat. "Anita." She held up a hand. "Would you like to order something?" He looked taken aback. I was hoping we could talk." Anita crossed her arms. "About what?" Henry sighed, rubbing his temples. "I made a mistake, Anita. A big mistake." She leaned against the counter. "Oh." Henry's voice was thick with regret. "The woman I left you for, she left me. Her father lost everything, and when I couldn't provide the kind of life she wanted, she abandoned me. Just like that." Anita felt no sympathy. "So you came back to me?" "No," he said quickly. "I came to apologize. I see it now, I was blind. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it all away." Anita studied him, but she felt nothing. No love. No pain. No anger, just peace. "You're right," she said. "You did throw it away. And I hope you learn from it." Henry looked at her with pleading eyes. "Can we at least be friends?" Anita smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Henry, we were never friends. I was just someone you used." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, drowning in his own regrets. Years later, Anita sat in her restaurant's private office, flipping through business reports. She was now the proud owner of 3 thriving restaurants, and she was engaged to a man who saw her worth from the very beginning. Her past no longer haunted her. She had given Henry her heart, her dreams, and her sacrifices. But in the end, losing him was the best thing that had ever happened to her.